Welcome to another episode of What is to be Done from the Applied Theory channel. I'm here with Wesley Wagamba. He is the Treasury Secretary of the CPM-K, Communist Party Marxist Kenya. And we're here to discuss specifically the illegal detainment of Booker Omole and to try and help raise some funds and take care of his legal funds, and as well as learn a little bit more about the CPM-K. Okay, so first, tell us all about yourself and tell us about your movement, the Communist Party Marxist Kenya.
Okay. My name's Wesley Washington Wagumba, and I serve as the National Treasurer of CPM-K. So, as you said, our full name, it's the Communist Party Marxist Kenya, and that is a Marxist-Leninist and a vanguardist party based in Kenya. I'm sure your viewers are familiar with where it's located geographically. I'm not going to assume it's a bunch of dumb Americans watching, because in this regard, I'm seeing a lot of the audience is people who are very left wing, or at least want to change, the world and society and outlook, and will actually be interested to do that type of research. But yes, we are a Marxist organization, and we're trying to build a socialist. First of all, it's a socialist Kenya, but eventually even a socialist Africa as a whole. We are still internationalist in that we're still internationalist in our doctrine ultimately. Ours is the ideology. It's just that with the Party of Lenin, you have to, of course, build it on a particular geographical setting so that it can have some hind legs to operate from. So yes, that's the introduction.
All right. Well, then let's get to a more meaty question. So you guys are Marxist-Leninists, or at the very least, what it seems to me, and I could be mischaracterizing. So now over here at the ACP, we have a unified, a Marxist tendency is what we call it, which we pull the best parts, from a lot of the different models and whatnot, and then we synthesize something that's particular for America. From the conversations that I've had with you in private, you guys seem to be very similar in that effect, and obviously you have your own particular characteristics and your own particular approaches. We're not saying that we're identical, but I did find that there was a lot of resonance between the both of us on that. So one of the things, because we are Applied Theory channel, so we like to know how our counterparts might be applying theory. One of the first things that we did on our first episodes, or our second episode, was to go and cover social investigation. So I guess my first question here is, let's start with the fundamentals. How do you conduct social investigation in Kenya, and what are the key characteristics of Kenya's civilizational character or personality? Or basically, tell us about Kenya. Tell us about what the conditions are, and how you go about investigating those.
Okay. I mean, the first thing that we must do, and which we have done here locally, is to essentially acknowledge the key structural differences between the Kenyan society and what has existed in China, for example, Russia, Western Europe, and even the United States and Northern America as a whole. In terms of the societies are definitely not the same, even in terms of the fabric. And in Kenya's case, I'm not going to compare it directly with unitary systems such as China's. In China, historically, it has always been under one, at least it has always been regarded as one imperial domain, in that either there's an emperor and they're the ones who rule over the entire area. That's why they even have talks of the mandate to heaven and such. So even when China was separated, there were different warlords. All of them were trying to get political power and influence, and even when, I guess, colonial powers were trying to take chunks of the land itself, there was still an overall view that eventually one person is going to dominate the entire country, and this person will have the domain of the mandate to heaven. They're going to have the mandate to heaven, and they are going to now control the whole society to prosperity. That is the overall vision that societies such as China has. Russia seems to have also a very similar outlook ever since the one person essentially ruled over the entire area. Hence why they even had royalty with the Tsar and all that. In Kenya's case, on the other hand, our civilization identity is pretty much very decentralized, and even ethnically it's plural. And what I mean by this is that we historically have not been ruled under one particular entity. It has always been different tribes, all of them ruling over smaller, yes, I'd say chiefdoms and smaller domains. And not only Kenya, but most most of the African continent. There's a few kingdoms that have existed here and there, especially in West Africa. There's definitely notable ones. I can say even if you look at Egypt, you've heard of, I think, there's Kush, there's the actual Egyptians, the pharaohs and such. There's a few notable kingdoms, but for most of the continent, it's a bunch of sub-tribes. So we are ethnically plural, and as a result, we are pretty much our fabric has pretty much been a decentralized one. And within it, now in terms of the methodology of this said civilization, I can say that a lot of the sub-tribes, even though the cultures definitely differ, a lot of them are very communal in terms of how they run their day-to-day affairs. They're communal, and they're also very ecological. What I mean by this is that a lot of tribes they essentially have a oneness with nature. In that, I can say that if you go to the Mara, for example, Masai Mara, you're going to find communities which live alongside, let's say, even elephants, and they never attack each other. They never, of course, this is a bit idealistic. There's obviously times when I'm sure there's antagonism, but for most of it, there's a form of harmony in terms of how they exist. What I meant by communal is that this is now communalism, the way Marx had talked about it, the first version of communism, where people are essentially, it's a gift economy. So people tend to share things within their society. Nobody gets to sleep hungry. Nobody's left behind. That is a sort of system that a lot of tribes tend to have, and that's now it's part of our fabric in terms of operating like that. The South Africans, I think it's the Zulu, have a concept called Ubuntu. That's the best way I can explain it in the in the channel. But this should also, because of our decentralized nature, this is what exists in terms of the mainstream interpretation. But you can find tribes which have a vastly different way of operation. For example, we even had entire warrior tribes who are now their system is totally just based on power dynamics, and it can even look similar to I'd say Western stereotypes of the likes of, I don't know, even
So
fascist or
pre-Roman type,
very patriarchal.
sort of like how Europeans are, basically. It sounds like Romans, honestly, or it sounds like pre-Roman. The imperialist tendency to rule with power anyway. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, I'm listening. I'm hearing this. Like, honestly, I mean, I knew some of this stuff, but some of this stuff is the first that I'm hearing it. So it's and I'm trying to relate it to the stuff that I know. Like, but like the overarching thing that what I'm hearing is a lot like the Taino, right? Like the Taino in the Caribbean before Columbus landed and committed genocide there.
Definitely.
Yeah. But the Taino were sort of, and that's kind of what I think one of the peoples that I'm not sure if it was if Marx covered them but every time that I hear because I did read it, I just don't remember the specific people they covered. But you're talking about these pre pre-industrial like communists, right? Like or like basically communal societies that are communists in function in nature. They just hadn't developed the material forces to move beyond that. But yeah, no, I mean, no, I'm not characterizing Africa as not having a material means. You guys always did. You guys are like the freaking richest continent in the world. But obviously there was the European influence that prevented the development into great power, which I'm sure this century might be the Chinese century, but I'm almost certain that it's the 22nd century is going to be the African century. But in any case, it's so it sounds like there's already sort of a foundation, like a cultural foundation for preferring or communism, which is kind of a strength because that's not what we got over here.
In fact, what I also wanted to touch on is that with that background set, we now also have another element that has been embedded into our civilization, I'd say, as a continent, is anti-colonialism. Because when colonialism came to the continent, it disrupted that way of life. And so now we were essentially there's this term that gamers usually speed run. Yeah, they made us essentially speed run into industrialization, and it wasn't even our industrialization. It was now to assist, the development of Europe, and I'd say even the development of the continental United States and such.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very deep hatred for colonization and even imperialism. It's just it's embedded in its and it exists within every, I'd say, ideological formation that is within the continent right now. So people who are far left, people who are far right, even so-called centrist, but I don't believe that's a position, to be honest. But all of them have an embedded hate towards colonialism and such. Of course, there's now some who are saying we hate colonialism, but that's the world is it's Pax Americana, so we should just negotiate with the Americans. There's some now for us who are in the far left who are saying no, imperialism is a paper tiger, it's falling, so we should just go against them completely. But overall, now because of the interruption to this way of life and the type of brutality that was meted upon citizens of the continent, that's also now a core part of our identity. I'd say even for the Chinese, I think that the closest to our thinking, a core part of their identity is definitely now essentially they've overcome the century of humiliation, and they keep on saying we are never going back to that type of way of existence. So we are going to build the best economy, the best army. We're going to go to the moon, and we're going to essentially embarrass the Americans on every front and the Europeans, because these people essentially they brutalized us for the longest time, and now it's time to go back, to the top. So yes,
it's unfortunate, and I will state, and I'm not making any apologies for America, certainly not the American bourgeoisie. Although much of our working class history, they've done a really good job of erasing. But there was a time when we said the same thing to them. We were like, no, because ultimately, and I said this in a conversation we had prior to, but Europe is basically the continuation of the Roman Empire, which has it was a slave economy in the first place. It was probably one of the most brutal and exploitative civilization that ever existed, and of course, having carried that through all the way to the present. It's been a cancer on European culture, European society, and even us in America. We there was a point where we said we had enough. Unfortunately, we kept too many of their ways, and that led to reassertion of the imperial, Roman model. Now, I will say we are currently, and we have always been, at least the working class of America, chafed under that model because, the no kings, which has honestly been, exploited by the by our institutional freaking bourgeoisie. It is a real sentiment. We don't, there is at least a partial recognition that the Roman system is a cancer, and we treat it as such, but we haven't fully gotten there, and and honestly, I'm super glad to see that the rest of the world has. I mean, it's not really difficult for anyone who's been under the boot to say no, get this out of here. But I mean, the fact that you guys are even discussing, I like that your left is discussing that, the empire is in decline, because it is. I heard the other day that the Iran won't even let anybody pass through the Strait of Hormuz unless they pay for the oil in yuan. So yeah, gone are the days of the petrodollar, and now we get to see, I guess, the rise of the petro yuan, which is honestly, as far as anti-imperialism goes, that is a majorly positive development. It's going to hurt us over here, and I'm expecting harsher times for Americans. But honestly, things are gonna have to get worse before they get better. But going back to the actual original question, so okay, you've definitely investigated, and you clearly know your people and your history. So what are you doing as far as like the social investigation part? Like what like how do you go down to the people and figure out how to connect with them and sort of reunite them with the communal culture and how that meets communism?
I mean, for us, we essentially use the Maoist. We use the Maoist doctrine of essentially establishing the mass line, and also the other thing that we have done is that we've had to map out the class structure of the, and this is going to come up over and over in this interview. We've come up with the class structure of our society so that we don't end up, dealing with people who are even materially antagonized to us, yet we keep on wasting resources and time trying to change them. So, an example, we have the comprada bourgeoisie and we have a very large landlord class, and these are essentially Europeans who came to the country during colonial times, and they got large sorts of land. And even after independence, because we were a semi-colony, that land, it remained under their custody. There's no way we'd spend a ton of resources trying to go and implement, mass line or an understanding tone to them in order to try and recruit them to join our movement, because our movement is essentially opposed to their existence, and especially their existence in a material perspective where they own all of this land that was stolen. And for the comprada bourgeoisie, these are people who they're essentially serving imperial interests. So if, for example, they were to back the communists and the communists were to take power, we will not follow doctrines that are given to us by the IMF. In fact, we wouldn't even do any of those programs so that we can get loans. We'd prefer to develop independently and develop apart from the West. So these are classes.
I'm sorry, I got excited there. Like, so you're avoiding the basically the pit trap of the Second International, which basically they class collaborated, which is why it fell apart. They invited the bourgeoisie and they tried to do things together, and they ended up undermining their entire the entire project, ultimately siding with the imperialists and going off to World War One. So that's awesome. I'm glad you guys got there. Certainly that was the position that Lenin took. So that's good news. All right.
And for us, it's also a matter of just the resources that anybody has at hand at any time. There's usually opportunity cost. You're not going to. It's either you spend resources to do thing A or thing B. You can't exactly do both things at the same time. You can't. I think there's this saying, you can't have your cake and also eat it. There's a saying that goes like that, an English one. So it's the same situation for us. We have to also, in terms of the groups to be targeted for us to achieve our goals, it has to be very specific. So anyway, going on to the actual social investigation. As I told you, the foundation of our social investigation is essentially the mass line. And the way we institutionalize it is through having a lot of ourselves embedded in different facets of society, at least where the working class and the peasantry are, because those two are the units that we have decided. Those are the two units which are the driving force of our society. And any society that is not developed, most of the time, it's going to be those two. It's going to be, they're both the working class. For us, we have identified them as we've identified the peasantry, and then there's now just an overall working class. And these are people who either they work in now factories, they're in trade unions, even I'd say office workers to some extent. So yeah, we have cells embedded in factories, farms. We even have them in universities. So these students who are within the petite bourgeois, who we still see as, these are people who can serve. These are people who are interested in achieving the vision that we have. So there's informal settlements, and even nowadays, now we're getting even into diaspora networks. So these are people who have left Kenya and gone to work abroad because Kenya doesn't have opportunities. So even for them, they still want Kenya to be successful so they can come back here because,
Right.
at the end of the day, no matter where you travel. Pardon?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, because resources got to come from somewhere. You got to be resourceful, especially when you're not taking the bourgeois money, which again, that's a great thing. But yeah, it also makes it a little bit difficult because you got to bootstrap up, right?
Yeah. That's also another advantage. It's that we get, because we are in so many different facets, the resources are definitely it's a bit advantageous in that regard, but we also want to have a large enough influence and a large enough coverage so that we can be able to now tell what the masses want and even the effect of our programs. So, of course, you know how the mass line is. The first step is to listen systematically to the people. This is where we now host general meetings and people can come and give their grievances. So, for example, for us, the basic unit of our development as a country is usually I want to say it's at constituency level. That's how I can put it. We have constituencies which build up to counties and then now the national government. So we get people who come from a particular constituency and they'll tell us their grievances. So maybe, they don't have water or electricity, the state is harassing them here and there. They want a road. A lot. The universal problem in our country, because we are not industrialized, is that there are no jobs. That's because we don't have any industry, whether hard industry or light industry or even service. Our service economy is horrible compared to what you guys have. For us, we're having people who are reselling packaged Chinese goods, and for you guys, you're having the likes of Netflix and all that, which is why even the quality of the debates are different. You people are always talking about is a barista, for example, working class? I've seen that's a very hot topic amongst your leftists. While for us, on the other hand, what we will ask is a person who is managing a warehouse. Is that really a person who is a part of the working class? Yet they are not really making any value. They are just reselling a product because the product is only made by the Chinese worker.
We're post-industrial. We're post-industrial, which, by the way, the way that's packaged is that, we're technologized. Well, I mean, sure, we're technologized, but it's more like the difference between steel handcuffs and fuzzy handcuffs. You're still handcuffed. The other part is that what that masks is the deindustrialization. See, the reason that these professions like barista exist is simply because There are no real jobs. To prevent, or to pull as many laborers out of the reserve army of labor, which is the revolutionary potential, they have to give them nonsense jobs. And now I know I'm stepping in a minefield here. I'm going to get, get a lot of hate, but this is what I call metastatic labor, which, if you know where it means, cancerous. And I'm not saying that the people themselves are cancer. What I'm saying is the type of job that was created to pull people out of the labor force serves a multitude of purposes. On the barista case, there was an opportunity they had, right? So they had a problem, the capitalists did, and the problem was there's so much coffee being generated around the world that the amount of money it takes to pay for, the production of that is actually a little bit more than what you would get, for selling it, because it's the supply well exceeds the demand. Now, there's no way to stop that kind of production because every country's doing it. I mean, every country's doing it. I mean, if they can, grow coffee in Boston, and they do, then they can grow coffee anywhere pretty much, because that's a cold freaking place. Now, that being said, they had to find a way to make a profit off of it, right? These companies weren't going to, take a loss. So what they did is they came up with this ingenious plan. They would create a nonsense job that, machines were already doing in the first place. And they would use the labor, right, to justify the price gouging of the actual coffee, right? So now a coffee cup, or a cup of coffee, which would otherwise cost, back before the barista, thing, started to, expand and blow up, coffee would cost you no more than 25 cents, sort of just throwing the number out there. But I do remember when it was well the heck under $1 over here. So now suddenly, after these baristas show up, the coffee goes up to $3. $3 of coffee. That's 3 times the amount. Suddenly there's profitability, but it's not coming from the coffee. It's coming from the labor that they're using to justify the price gouging, which then they exploit the labor. They pull the surplus from the price gouging, and then they force these people to live on tips, right? So so really they made the coffee profitable again, but not really the coffee, but the labor exploitation made the coffee profitable again. And they pulled people out of the reserve army of labor. So that's less revolutionary potential. And here's the worst part: it puts their material conditions, like they are materially now dependent on this metastatic labor, or this job that only exists to exploit them, exploit the consumer, which is now getting price gouged for the coffee, and exploit the labor that made the coffee beans in the first place. All while all of it could have been made by a machine, and the price of coffee could still be very, very low. And so it prevents them from having to adapt. Yeah, right. So this is what and that's the reason why we have those problems, these first world problems, where we're arguing about baristas instead of and I'm sure it seems ridiculous to you guys, because you guys are actually, you have a real industry. You like, what is this argument about baristas? These guys have lost the plot. Well, I mean, it might seem so, but the real argument is over the metastatic labor and the fact that the capitalist class created this, sort of useless, and it's not the only useless job. There are a lot of people that are going to, bucket this, but the insurance companies, right? So we've got an entire group of laborers that are out there. They sit in the front of the doctor's offices. They're the ones that take all your insurance information and, basically do all the paperwork and determine whether you get, a certain amount of coverage or what your copay is and all that stuff. But insurance companies are literally vampiric. They're rapacious middlemen that sap pretty much all the wealth out of the entire, system. It's used to exploit us because we're the ones that have to pay for the healthcare, right? So, and they're the ones that are denying us healthcare, which is why we spend the most for healthcare and get the, least, effective results in the entire technology. Like, we have the most deaths, we have the most. Our healthcare is the worst out of all the technological in the world, and it's because of the insurance companies. Now, the insurance companies create this metastatic labor, or these people who are processing all of your insurance information, but that's not a useful job. That's not a job that's needed. That's a job that justifies the existence of the insurance companies in the first place, and that creates a group of labor who will defend those companies. So the metastatic labor thing is not just a barista question. It's a whole slew of different occupations that were created in the post-technological world to justify additional extraction from the American people. But that being said, certainly I'm not complaining that we have it any less or worse. It's just a different system with a different set of problems, all created by capitalists. So we're all dealing with it. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off. But yeah, like, I know how ridiculous that argument sounds, and I just wanted to explain it a little bit better, because I mean, capitalism likes to create these, different scenarios that put us at odds in the working class with each other, when in fact we should recognize what the structural conditions that create these problems are, and then see where the common thread is. The common thread is capitalism exploiting people, whether it's deindustrialization and then the use of metastatic labor to recapture revolutionary potential and exploit, or just direct exploitation, as we are continuing to, as well, not we, but imperialists and are continuing to do in Africa.
It was definitely necessary to actually explain it so that it can be on record, so that people can be able to now access a full explainer, because many people just don't understand that you're not against the laborer, but you're against the whole you're against that particular dynamic where a person's labor is used to justify, price gouging, for example. So
right, everybody gets screwed in a scenario.
Yeah, the problem that I saw with that debate is that people are assuming, you guys are saying that baristas don't deserve to be paid and such, but that wasn't the case. So let me finish on my
Yes.
on what I was talking about. The next step after listening, systematically, is, of course, we do our analysis, and now we use dialectics for this. So we now figure out, these are not just the average Marxist metrics of, who owns the factors of production, who does the labor, where do the surpluses go. In some cases where, the imperialists are involved, we look at who exactly is benefiting. So, which type of foreign company, especially in areas where mining is involved, and things like that. And from there, of course, we have to come up with solutions. Then we take them back to the masses in terms of implementing them now in form of praxis. So this could be either we can build infrastructure ourselves, we can lobby for that infrastructure to be built. We could now say we need to do some mass action. We can, we can form even entire lobby groups and such. Then we get feedback again from the masses. Did our solutions work? If they didn't work, why was not the case? How can we improve on it? So this is just basic Maoist doctrine. That's how we go about it. And for us, just as I'd mentioned, because of the communal nature of our civilization, because that's what I'm supposed to tie it into, it's very easy for us to integrate these Marxist concepts into it. So that's and then for us, I can say Kenya doesn't have a big fear of big government when compared to countries such as yours, because there's a communal aspect of our existence and of our day-to-day living that has existed. So long as you are doing something in a public manner, but you're doing it via consultation with the masses, in that now the relationship is not top down, but it is horizontal, then that ceases to be a problem. So yeah, but we also have our own.
What is there any resistance to like centralization, for example? Like, I know the Vanguard likes to thread these sort of communities together, but is your culture like so low? Does your culture have I guess more issues with being too localized, because that can happen too. I mean, a lot of times, and we've seen this with anybody who's attempted collectivism here, especially during the 60s, they used to form these communes. That doesn't work, And I was wondering if there's a, because the Russians had a similar thing with the Mir system. They had like these localities that the peasants actually had, and this was before this was before even the Bolshevik Party, where they had sovereignty over their sort of townships or localities or counties and whatnot, and they were able to self-determine so long as they paid tribute to the czar, right? Do you guys, is the locality, or I guess the decentralization and the like ability to thread these different communal localities together difficult, or is it actually quite easy?
If just saying, if you do it on a horizontal platform, meaning that whatever decision is going to be made will be democratic and by consensus, then you're not going to have a problem. But if you bring a top-down solution and you're trying to essentially force your way through with it, yeah, then you're not going to go anywhere with whatever policy you have, because Kenya has also had its own fair share of dictators. And in fact, even our first and second presidents were both dictators. And with the first one, he came up with a phrase called harambe. And harambe means essentially pulling resources together. So we usually have events called harambes, and what that is that maybe the whole community comes together and they contribute resources towards doing something for, I'd say sometimes it's communal benefit, sometimes it is for a member of the community. Could be gathering resources, finances to cater for a funeral, a wedding, maybe treatment abroad, maybe funding education for a young person abroad. This was in the past. This was really in the past before, the region had a lot of proper schools and such. So the first dictator used this as his slogan, and it was very intentional because he tried to pull into the communalism that a lot of communities had, but he was doing it for nefarious purposes because the guy was essentially a comprada bourgeoisie. During the Cold War, he was aligned with the capitalist powers, looted a lot of state resources, stole a lot of, money
Yeah,
and the
that's
second president, our second president also just built up on that same exact reputation. So I don't want to get too much into
wary
a
of that is
Kenyan
what you're
political
saying.
lesson, but yes, the matter is that because of this background, they are definitely wary of centralization, but when it comes from the top. So if you stick to the normal ethos of a society in which it's communalism, but you're doing it on a horizontal basis, then you won't have an issue. So for us, we are much less libertarian compared to to the citizens such as those from the United States, for example.
Okay. All right. So we covered that probably. We're very detailed people, so we tend to go into the weeds with things. But okay, so let's get to the meat, of why we're here. We want to turn to a very specific comrade. First off, can you tell us who is Booker Omole and his role in the CPM-K, and in Kenya's political system in general?
Boko Omole is the general secretary of our Communist Party. Wait, can you repeat the question? I want to be more thorough.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the question was, who is he in the first place? So he's the general secretary of your party, and that's his role in the CPM-K, and in relation to Kenya's system in general, who is he in relation to Kenya's system in general? And maybe not just Kenya's. You can cover just in your party, but I know that obviously he's been persecuted by the state. So I was kind of just more or less alluding to that particular situation and who he is to not just your people, but also to the state that recently persecuted him.
Yeah, I mean, in relation to Kenya's system, I can say that he's one of the best revolutionaries that currently exist in the country, and not only revolutionary, but one of the most progressive revolutionaries that the country has right now. In fact, of course, for me, it's a personal bias because we serve within the same vanguard party, but I'd say he's the most progressive and the best politician that the country has. So, and he's also a Marxist-Leninist. He has a very big following on the internet. I know that he's especially a celebrity amongst a lot of Western and even Eastern comrades who see him online. But even locally, he has a very big pool amongst many Kenyans, especially those who lean towards Marxism and just many who lean towards a more developmental outlook of politics. So I'm not talking about those ones who are they are more like, into tribalism, or they are looking at politics to make money. Those ones hate him, in fact, because he always calls them out. So yes, that's if he's playing a very progressive role in Kenya's political system. And he's very vocal about it, and he's very mainstream now, especially because Kenya seems to be coming of age in terms of the way our political stance is changing. And that's about it in terms of him as the role he plays in the Vanguard Party. And then if you attach it to especially his influence in society, that now builds up to essentially the arrest.
So he got too popular, and
Yes.
the bourgeoisie, or the I guess the compromise class that cooperates with imperialism, decided to knock him down a peg, or try to mitigate their the popular the popular wow, I'm losing my ability to speak here. My bad. So they wanted to knock down a threat because he's gained enough popularity to pose one. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes.
so we I definitely get that. And so I'm going to ask why he was arrested. Because I know that that is the reason, but obviously the opposition, or the state, the imperialist state, is genuinely opposed to his popularity and wants to sideline him. So what was their reason? I guess because then that's what I mean by why was he arrested? What was their reason? And to be direct, is it true that the state genuinely fears his popularity and how he radicalizes the masses?
I mean, yes. So the circumstances surrounding his arrest, it's that the state is claiming that the crimes that they're putting forward is that they're saying he pulled a gun on another civilian, so a firearm. I know American audiences are surprised that even Kenyans, we 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 carry, because you guys are like the gun capital of the world. But so there's so they're claiming that he
Nothing
pulled a
surprises
gun
us.
on
When it comes to guns, nothing
they're claiming,
surprises us. We have a school shooting every other day.
oh wow, that's very dark actually. But
I'm being a
aside from
little
that,
bit facetious there. I mean, I don't know if it's every other day. Statistically speaking, that could be
I'm
true.
afraid to start.
I don't think it's
I'm
every
afraid to start. I'm afraid to start it actually, because that's going to not going to be very depressing. But back to the subject, they're claiming
Yes.
that he pulled a gun on another civilian, and that he threatened to essentially shoot the person with it. There's claims that he discharged the said firearm. There's also claims that he essentially attacked law enforcement and resisted arrest. And lastly, they're saying also they're essentially disturbing public peace. That's the claims of the police. So in terms of what actually happened, the police intercepted him while he was on a trip. This is for his own, personal engagements. So he was on a trip, and the police intercepted him. And the police who came to him were in civilian clothing. So you
So
can
they weren't
imagine.
identified.
Yes, they didn't even identify themselves. So all of a sudden you're stopped and you're having a bunch of civilians coming to apprehend you. That's a kidnapping, essentially. That's how the cartel tends to move even in our country, but especially for your audience, I'm going to use Mexico. If you look at how the cartel usually moves, it's all of a sudden you're driving and then there's a bunch of armed people who stop you and they're heavily armed and they're just telling you to, move, go and get into the next car, and they drive away with you, and that's how you're never heard from again. So that's what happens, of course. And in Kenya's case especially, we have had instances of a lot of activists and even a lot of politicians, sometimes even civilians. We've had instances of them being kidnapped, and they either come back very traumatized or they just never come back at all. So you find them dead or they just disappear completely. So there's a precedent already of this said situation that is very negative, and then it's happening to him, who he also survived an assassination attempt last year. I think it was sometime last year, or the other one, I'm not quite sure, but yes, again and again, people who were in civilian clothing came into his own house and they attacked people who were inside the house. They tried to attack himself, but then they were repelled. So and they were defeated.
Thank God.
Yeah. There was a brief firefight. One of the intruders, in fact, died. I'd say, fortunately, in this case. And then for the rest of them, they essentially ran away. So there's already a precedent of a lot of these very shady situations. And that's the same thing that the cops were trying to pull. So anyway, they apprehend him and then they take him around. They take him around his property, and in the process, so what that they did is that they went and raided his property, but with him in tow. I'm sure you guys are familiar. I think even the
Yeah,
American
they
police
took him
have this
along with, and then they
tendency.
raided his property after they detained him. So he's in the
Yeah,
back of, some squad
yeah,
car or
yeah,
whatever the heck, and
yeah.
they go into
So
this.
and
Yeah, okay.
in the process, they go and they went into his property and they found, this was a house. They found those a couple of people who were within the property. They were just chilling, so they end up arresting those people too. And of course, that is where there was some commotion, because why would you just come and find, we're just relaxed in the house, and then you
Right, and
also
they're
want
still
to.
not in uniform. They're still not in uniform at all.
Yes, there was no person in uniform. Even if there was, they did not have a warrant. So they take all of these people, then they go and place them they were taken to jail cells, of course. And then when it comes to the
This
court
is a year
process,
after an assassination attempt, so you guys have every right
yes,
to be, to be
very vigilant
honestly
and even
armed and
paranoid.
to protect yourself. I'm surprised you showed
Yeah,
restraint over in America. We probably, somebody comes busting into one of our houses. Some of our states, we got what do you call it? Stand your ground laws, where somebody busts into your house, you don't even have to, like. There's no legal protection. That person in that house
yeah,
can shoot you down. And we've actually had, as far as some of our gun violence, that happened. Like, I know Florida's a stand your ground state. So I mean, so you guys, and as far as, and I'm just trying to bring this back to the American perspective, so everybody understands what they're more than justified. Well, there was an assassination attempt. We don't know if the first one was by the police or by some gang or whatever the heck, maybe
yeah,
imperialist freaking,
exactly.
agents or assets, right? So you guys have
Yeah,
every right to defend yourselves. And here, these guys come in no, in plain clothes, no identification, no warrant. And I'm so if this was America, I'm just saying, if this was America, there might have been some, there might have been some casualties on their end. Is all I'm saying. All right. So
Yeah, I
anyway,
mean,
I'm just saying I not only relate, but I actually sympathize, and I admire the restraint you guys had. Anyway, carry on. I just
yeah.
wanted to.
So after that, they're taken to jail cells, and then from there, when they went to court, they brought forward a so-called witness who was coached to essentially go ahead and say that yes, Buka did do all of these weird things that the police are saying. And after and now when the process was going on, that's when the person who was coached came along. Right now, they've come along and they've said that yes, whatever is being claimed, that's not what happened. Booker didn't actually fire a gun. He did not come and threaten us and all that. So essentially, they've withdrawn the case from their end because those were the allegations, and they're saying that this is not what we are up to, and that's the case is still ongoing, but that's the current situation. It's
So
just
they
a
have
case where
ongoing, even when the witness themselves said he didn't do it.
yes.
That sounds
I mean,
perfectly above.
so of course, because I'm not a lawyer per se.
Mhm.
There's some particulars that in terms of how the case is going that I still don't have, but that's the overall summary of what is going on. The state is behaving shady in terms of how they are trying to phrase the whole case. You can just tell a lot of the accusations are they are bogus and they are very shallow.
Right.
So it's just a way to try and punish Buka and try to it's a way to
So
it's a way to bully him in
intimidation.
short.
Yeah. So it sounds like they're intimidating him, right? Now, I'm going to get to the next question because it seems like they're trying to basically. So it seems like there's two ways they're trying to come at you. One way is through physical intimidation, right? And the second
Yeah.
way is through lawfare. So now that their failed attempt at provoking an altercation where they had some sort of justification to do anything resulted in them arresting him instead, and then the witness absolutely dropped all of their claims. Now they're basically trying to hit you in the financial area, right? They're like if your
Yes.
party is so successful, if Booker is one of the upcoming extraordinarily popular populist leaders of your country, then they're trying to basically drain your coffers, so to speak, by through expensive lawfare.
Yes. So the other thing before we even get into that, I forgot to mention during his arrest, they tortured him. That's another thing. They
Yeah,
were
no, I saw. I
torturing
know.
him. Yeah, they're trying to reenact all of these American movies and tactics where they're like, oh, you're going to tell us the type of what type of terrorism you're financing or whatever. I think the guy who was apprehending him was he was just delusional. I think the guy thought he was a movie star or some shit like that. So maybe within inside they thought they were Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible or something, where you're going to torture a dissident and then you're going to learn about this massive conspiracy against the
Really,
homeland. Then you'll go and protect the homeland. Yeah, it was a very
I,
stupid. If you look at the kinds of questions they were asking while they were torturing him, it's ridiculous. But so that's just for your audience, an
no,
added.
and for our audience, I want to say that seems to be a common thread. Like our law enforcement, like especially the imperialists, they're so freaking sheltered that they honestly think their life is a freaking movie. So
Yeah,
our chairman got
exactly.
detained. Now, mind you, that he was detained only in customs and whatnot, but they pulled him in. They did the interrogation room. They had
Yeah,
agent interrogate him. the agent was asking all of these weird questions, but they were coming from like memes and stuff, which was like,
Yeah, exactly.
all humor stuff. And then and every time that Haas explained what it is we do, who we are, and he's like, the guy was like, "Huh, that sounds reasonable." And
Exactly.
they were completely
It,
surprised. It's like, wait,
it's
so
absolutely ridiculous.
what I actually think we should be doing as a government instead of what I'm actually doing, and that's what you're about. So you're not a terrorist. No. So you have no contacts with the Lebanese paramilitary. No. It's like, buddy,
Yeah,
why did you fire off an RPG over in right? He goes, dude, you pay $8,000 when you go down to Florida to fire one off. I got to fire one off for free because they offered it. Wouldn't you if you were offered? And they're like, oh,
exactly.
yeah, I
It's
guess so.
ridiculous. And
What?
I know they've probably done the same thing to the activists who went to deliver aid to Cuba. I saw that a couple were
Oh,
detained.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, to the main point, yes. So
Sorry, I
the
didn't mean to
court
sidetrack.
the court decided to set bail at about 500,000 shillings, which comes to around, I think it's 4,000 USD. And for a country that is,
A lot.
developing such as ours, that's a crazy amount of money. In fact, it's now set him and everybody around him in debt. So this is cash
Right.
that even for an American is still a lot of money, and that's what the judicial system has decided to do. And this is a tactic that has been employed since about last year, 2025, where anytime you are taken to court and there's some political reasoning tied, or in fact you're just a person from working class background, they're going to make sure that they really punish you in terms of the amount of the type of legal fees you're going to pay.
And so
So yes,
ultimately they're trying to they're taking money from your movement so that you can't actually make any progress or develop any
I mean,
material.
I even wish it was particularly the movement, because then he wouldn't be affected on a personal basis. But they're taking money specifically and save from individuals. So it's not like they're going to look at, oh, you're from the Communist Party, let me hit up the treasurer, and that's the person who we are going to try. And what they're doing is that if you go there as an individual, they're going to make sure you are in bankruptcy. So we even
Right.
had an instance last year where some youth were arrested for protesting, and their bails were at about 1 million each, 1 million shillings, which is now 10,000 USD. No, it's not 10,000. It's about, I'm using a conversion rate of 100 shillings to the dollar, but I know it's close to that. But it was about 8,000 USD, 7,000. And these are people who have not even finished campus or university, many don't even have jobs. So the judiciary is using it specifically. It's an extortion racket, in short.
Right.
And
Yeah. No, I
I
mean,
know the executive is in cahoots with the judiciary and such. What else? And I know there's also a lot of bribing that goes on around, because that's what all of this is. That's the only way you can explain it.
now
Because
now
why
we
else
we
would you?
we have a for-profit prison system, and we experience now not our movement, at least not yet, and cross fingers that'll happen eventually, I'm sure. But we have a for-profit prison system, so our especially our African American population is targeted astronomically, more than any other, because basically in our 13th Amendment states that slavery is abolished except for prison, right?
Oh
Prison
wow,
slavery is fine.
wow, how
Yeah,
convenient.
right. So we didn't even abolish slavery. We just made it very conditional. Well, then suddenly
Yeah.
all the black people are being arrested, and because these are now private prisons, so they make money off of the and so they're pulling people off the street for things that they didn't do, or things that don't even justify the kind of sentences they get. And then when they get in there, they get then suddenly the officers find infractions that extend the sentence. And these people who may have gone in for 1 year, 2 year, which already was a trumped up charge in the first place, and of course they're poor, so they can't afford the legal fees. So they have to plead out. So when they plead out, they go into the prison system, and the prison system keeps them in there for as long as humanly possible. And of course, the prison record creates, the inability to vote, the inability to get a job when they get back out. So what do they have to resort to just to survive? Well, eventually people get desperate enough to commit crimes to do it, and then they're back in the system again. So they have this system of cyclical slavery. Now, this is just for profit over here, which is obviously a diseased way of freaking doing things. But it sounds like they're doing that, but politically for you guys. Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, yes,
that's
in
really
fact,
tough to hear.
and even here there's talks of introducing such a system, but they've not done it yet, and hopefully they are not going to do it.
Maybe, I hope it never happens. I hope it
Yeah.
never happens.
Yes, but
Um,
that's the current situation with the book in terms of even the how the
okay.
judiciary is playing it.
All right. Well, so we covered the Booker situation, and we definitely want to, and we'll get to it, I guess, is the last question, because we want to make sure that we can stand in solidarity with the CPM-K and get as much support from, for you guys as possible. Obviously, we want you to succeed. But let's step back a little, and just talk more about your party, and find out more about the CPM-K. So, how are you guys improving your people's material conditions, and what are the biggest threats to those conditions right now?
I mean, this is right up my alley because as the treasurer, I'm in charge of, uh, let's say, welfare and also resources. That's how we've structured the party. So, in terms of improving material conditions, uh, it's through, I'd say, in summary, it's through building enterprise. It's through moving towards industrialization, even without achieving state power in general. There is still a lot of leeway to essentially build. The anarchists usually call it mutual aid. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I like about especially anarchists in the West. They are very hands-on in terms of how they do, mutual aid, assisting their communities. We are doing a version of that, but for us, we are focusing on building a lot of enterprise in communities because, as I'd mentioned, I'm not sure if I mentioned this formally or informally to you, a universal problem in all of the communities that exist in the entire country, except maybe where the comprada bourgeoisie reside, is that there is no jobs. And the reason for this is because there's no industry. According to Marxist analysis, you have to go and essentially you have to go and solve the root cause of a problem. And so for us, that root cause is on building businesses and such. So that's what
Well,
we are doing
hold
to
on. I
improve
heard from the
material
Western
conditions.
left. I heard from the Western left just recently
Uh-huh.
that and the right, that starting businesses is capitalist. So you can't be communist, right? Because that's capitalist. Businesses themselves are capitalist, are they not?
Yeah, from your viral tweet. And funny enough, the response I made to that tweet attracted a lot of people from your, I think it's people who are within ACP or around your orbit, and they've ended up following me. Just a dozen or so though. So I'm not exactly a celebrity or something. I've not started charging for autographs yet, but perhaps in a few. I'll also start a business to charge autographs as the proper capitalist that I am. A proper capitalist grifter. So the so the enterprise exists both in socialist, and in any society, even in fascist society, even in a futurist, I've seen there's a new ideology, futurist society where automation does everything. That's just communist society, but it still exists.
They existed in feudal
Things still
society.
have
How
to
was it
be,
capitalist when it existed
yeah.
prior to capitalism? This doesn't make any sense.
Things still have to be produced, and they still have to be produced in a way that is, socialized in a factory of sorts with a group of people, or in an office, or in just a location, a locale. Things have to be produced that are essentially consumed by other
Or
people,
otherwise have
and
the society
essentially, or can even be used for survival. And there's no way you're going to come and say that that's now capitalism. And the thing is, the way people look at it is that they'll say, "Oh, but this is for profit." But at the end of the day, profit is essentially surplus, and surplus is what enables humanity to essentially conquer nature and to essentially
build.
even build a sense of modernity. And there's people who are going to come and tell me that, oh, but you're looking at modernity as from a Western perspective, but no, modernity in your particular civilizational context, you still need to produce surplus at such a large amount that you achieve post scarcity, that
Right,
you
because
do automation. And
yeah,
that can be
exactly.
done from a Kenyan context, from an American context, from a Chinese, from a Russian, from a Western European, Latin American. So the thing I think I should mention is, aside from when we build enterprise, for us, the basic unit we decided to use is cooperatives. And these are more specifically worker cooperatives. So enterprises that run on full-on worker democracy. So when it comes to making decisions, majority of the workers have to agree. When it comes to dividing the profit or surpluses, it has to be divided amongst what the workers decide on. And apart from being an overall more, I think you can say even more efficient method of doing enterprise, and a much more human-centered one, much more socialist one, it also assists in terms of mobilization because it continues class struggle. That is, and that's my biggest, I'd say, and in fact, that's even our party's biggest difference with, how Deng operates and even China. We are more willing to be hands-on when it comes to doing class struggle. So it continues class struggle because, of course, even in the market, you're competing against the capitalists and you're beating them. And even in terms of comparison, the workers are able to compare the living standards of a person working under the cooperative with one who is working under the capitalist. And of course, the cooperative one will be superior because the wages are not tied to, somebody's, they're not opposed to somebody's
Somebody's stock options, basically.
willingness to make profit. So
Yeah.
yes, that's how we focus on improving material condition for now, though. But of
No,
course, for people who
and
cannot work, we focus on essentially we still do charity for those people who can't work. These are the elderly, children. So we focus on even introducing free educational programs, free daycare, very subsidized healthcare and such for those ones who cannot, generally for everybody, but especially for those ones who cannot work and cannot essentially work enough to pay for it. We still offer it. So
so
yes,
the
I think
question
that
is,
answers your
what you're
question.
describing. Yeah, you did. You absolutely did, answered my question, and that leads into the next question because I was going to ask you, like, do you guys see a path uh, through using dual power, or you have another strategy? But honestly, it sounds like you already have at least the bones of a dual power project in underway, because if your cooperatives are making money and they are a superior, and honestly, guys, I know everybody's going to argue about this, but I don't. I'm going to state it as a fact. Anytime that you collectivize industry, anytime that you collectivize, production, manufacture, all that stuff, it's a superior model, and it's not just a superior model because it makes the most money. It's literally because if you make people owners of their own production, then they care about it more than somebody who's just getting paid the least amount to show up, work for somebody else's benefit, and then walk away with absolutely no say or direction over, what their productivity goes to, what their productivity, and how their productivity benefits them or their own community. Now, collectivization, when you own something, you care about it. This is an automatic, and this is the reason why even the regular worker is looking for ways to improve their efficiency. In fact, the Soviets had a phenomenon happen when they collectivized called Stakhanovism, where this guy was like so enthusiastic about having ownership of the means of production, and so enthusiastic about having a democratic say in his workplace, and so that this guy Stakhanovich, he worked his butt off, figured out ways to do the work in the factories even more efficiently, and literally increases productivity by like hundreds of percent. And then taught everybody else how to, and then the papers picked it up and they're like, yo, look at this guy, he's a hero, he's and it started an entire it started a whole trend where everybody in the Soviet Union was like, we gotta beat him. So there was a competition of who could be the most productive. And this is one of the reasons why the 5-year plan was so freaking successful. It wasn't, you see, a lot of people miss this part of the collective industry, but collective industry is incredibly important because it motivates the people. If you own your productivity, then you want that productivity to get you the most, and that's what happened. And it did get them the most because the Soviet system ended up producing an entire industrialized nation when they were practically coming from the Stone Age. They had nothing. They were underdeveloped. Almost nearly the entire country didn't even have electricity, while the rest of Europe was practically fully developed, had their own grids and all that stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Collective industry is so you guys are actually building the bones for dual power, because now you have superior profits with collective industry. You can outcompete your capitalist counterparts, and then you're using that money because of your civilization's collective nature already to benefit the people. So it sounds like you're establishing institutions underneath the current state that people are starting to rely on and trust, even more. That's dual power. That's literally what that is. So you guys have a dual power plan. I love
that's
it.
it. For that question, I think more people need to read your article, because it's essentially the same. Our plan is essentially the same one as what you've outlined, except with the less deng. That's what I'd say. That's the key difference between.
Listen, and that's probably because your system isn't designed the way ours is. Our system is designed so that there's 1,000,001 loopholes for the capitalists to slide through to cheat the workers and the American people, and 1,000,001 ways for them to hide that. We had the Panama Papers that were released where the billionaire class, turns out they have trillions that they just smuggled away and hid in these opaque trusts overseas, where they didn't pay the taxes that they were supposed to. They stuff that came from places that they exploited in illegal business practices and stuff like that. So we have this situation where we have to deal with the corporate structures that exist, and because those corporate structures exist, and also because all of those loopholes exist, they actually created the very pathways that allow us to drive straight through them without anybody seeing. And this is what we have to have to exploit, because if we don't, then we don't have a pathway forward. Our legal system is so complex that the levels of obstruction for the kind of thing that you're doing, is insane. And so you have to go through a lot of these, it sounds underhanded. It's underhanded if you use it to exploit people, but these underhanded means to hide the beneficial means, or the dual power that you were discussing, where you benefit people, but you have to hide it because there's literally laws on our books that say whatever a company does, it has to be in the pursuit of profit, meaning you can't benefit other people if you want it. It literally prevents you from benefiting people, with business. So the reason why I think we sort of lean heavier on the Deng side of things is because the Deng side of things was how to exploit those systems that keep you enslaved. So even if you do uneven development, eventually you're able to, sort of fortify it through, these dual power projects and these poverty alleviation projects that create a whole process democracy and an advanced socialist and strengthened socialist system. So yeah, I just wanted to, say there's a reason why for you that's perfectly sane. For us, it has to be, we have that different emphasis. It's not a matter of, us being different in what we're trying to accomplish, just different in the systems that we exist in.
Yeah, that's true. So I think we can go to the next
Yeah.
question.
Yep. Sorry
Right?
about that. Yeah. You'll please forgive me. I just like to relate everything that you're saying to the systems because I mean ultimately I want to make sure that we have this back and forth where there's commonality between us and I want it to help resonate our side of things to your side of things without taking away from your side of things and without anything you saying pulling away from from what we're doing. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to achieve the same things. All right, so let's go to the next one. Yeah. So what are this is I asked this because this is personal obsession of mine. I have been following Traore for as soon as he popped up on the scene. Now I'll admit, the reason this question is in here is because I'm a huge freaking fan, and obviously I'm going to admit my bias right from the start. I love the Sahel State Union. I love what they're doing. I think that the highway that they created was amazing. It's okay if we do agree, disagree, whatever, but I did want to ask you what your thoughts on the formation advancements being made in the Sahel states. Like what are your thoughts on that? And the recent unification in the past few years.
Okay. First of all, they're a progressive movement because they formed to be against, especially imperialism. That's their whole gist. Against imperialism from the French. They've succeeded in kicking the French out and also the Americans out. The largest drone base in the world was in Niger. Now they totally had to relocate. I'm not sure where they went. I mean, part of those assets have come to
Hopefully
Kenya now, but
just away is good.
yeah, away is good. But I'm sure most of those drones have been blown up by the Iranians anyway, so the problem solved. So, yeah, there are progressive movements that is against imperialism. Yeah, they are very pro-development. You definitely see that they have the look, feel, and also they're putting in a lot of effort towards industrialization. With that being said, at the end of the day, though of course it's not my even for me, it's still not my place to essentially cast judgment upon whatever systems they're running. I'm literally in the same situation as yourself in this regard. It's just that I'm a bit higher on the priority chain in terms of what I could, for example, mention about them because I'm African and they're also African.
Oh, okay. You know what? Yeah, I get it. No, that makes perfect sense. Then please excuse my intrusion on that. I understand. I don't want to put you in jeopardy for because I know your state is highly sensitive to, and they've already harassed you. So please.
No. What I wanted to say was, I feel like this because they're not exactly. We also believe that being Leninist is, it's the scientific and essentially the most correct way to do it. Being Marxist-Leninist and having our systems of consensus democracy and then democratic centralism. You just mentioned whole people's democracy. That's also where we are headed. But with less Deng, again, I'm going to repeat it.
Fair enough.
So for the system, it's very centralized, and it's like there's a whole militaristic structure to it. So there's the danger of their movement still ending up like Thomas Sankara, because he's the whole. A lot of them draw inspiration from him. And with how his experiment ended, his socialist experiment, it was very centralized, so much so that when he was assassinated, the whole system came tumbling down because the person who assassinated him took over, who was, I think it was Conchaore, there's a name, who was his deputy. He took over and he reversed a lot of the progressive elements of the Burkinabe system at the time. And then in fact, he brought back the French into the country, did a lot of, essentially they went back to the comprada capitalist mode of production. And if you compare resilient systems and look at even what's happening in Iran right now, where they can kill successive major political leaders and the system still keeps on operating. They can even destroy infrastructure, but it doesn't change anything. So if you need a system that has a lot of, I'd say, decentralization and is from the bottom up in terms of even how it seeks its legitimacy and its appeal and its decision making. And I know this is something that they probably know and they're probably working on, but there's a danger that their
There is
systems
a danger there.
potentially,
No,
there's a danger that
we agree.
they could fall apart because of that regard. But I'm pretty sure they've studied Sankara's model properly and everything. At the same time, I also saw that I think it was Burkina Faso that they still do deal with the IMF and World Bank and such. So there's a myth that I've seen going around that they don't, and that they've completely cut a lot of these financial institutions out. But that's not exactly true. They are still tied to the overall global financial system. But one thing I know is that they can never sign on to deals that go against the interests of their country, because
Right.
at the end of the day, the way they seek legitimacy is by development, because that's the that's the doctrine, or that's at least the vision that managed to get, especially their militaries and even their people, to back these types of coups and these types of uprisings.
Now,
But
what I did hear about them, sorry, what I did hear about them was a lot of the IMF stuff was them paying off a lot of their debt. And then mind you, maybe there is. I'd have to look into it a little bit further. There's still some IMF dealings, but I did want to say, like, what it seems like is they're trying to wean themselves off of that. What you said, that actually, like that gels, because yeah, they might still have ties, but they're I guess. Look, they're in a tight spot because the U.S. likes to use proxies and terrorist organizations to put pressure on any kind of state that is anti-imperialist and does things like nationalize, right? So you nationalize a bank, you nationalize resources, and they lose their mind and they send an army of terrorists out to come take back territories and stuff like that. So I think they're walking a fine line between trying to stay at least a little bit lower on the radar than being targeted as like a priority, right? Because right now U.S. empire is failing, so they can get away with some of this rebellion because there are higher priorities to the imperial, like the empire is losing ground and territory, right? So. I think that they're playing a game, but the thing that I will say, and I agree with you entirely, is right now their biggest weakness is they're relying on the great man theory. Thomas
exactly.
did the same thing, and if you can, the cap, which is like number one strategy, you decapitate the great man, from a movement, and the movement's over. So I do actually agree, and I hope I pray to God that they find a way to harden themselves from a more bottom up structure, so that kind of like Iran, like you were just saying, you can go after the leaders, but the bottom up move or the bottom up leadership and the bottom up structures are so resilient that you can't stop the actual progress. But yeah, okay. So we were discussing how we can contribute to or support your general secretary, Booker Omole. Seems like you guys put together a GoFundMe, so I'm going to go ahead and share that right now. And there we are. So I'm going to put the link in the description so that you guys will be able to see exactly where you can go to contribute. But as we covered, they're really trying to do lawfare, and they're really trying to bury the CPM-K. And of course, we as Marxists, we are absolutely committed to solidarity with our brothers overseas, especially ones who've been made vulnerable to imperialism in the way that the CPM-K has been. So. And of course, this is, just one, instance. Obviously, there's been more. I think we discussed there was another time where there were some other protesters that it was something along the lines of $10,000 or something. And, for their currency, that's actually insane. It's like, what is it, like 80 grand or something like that? It's an obscene amount. But the idea is what's a little to us is a lot to them. So if you guys can just, get in there, donate whatever you can, make sure that their general secretary is, well provided for, so that this case falls apart, because it's honestly nonsense. We would absolutely love you to do that, and we invite you to. And do you have any last closing remarks?
No, I mean, it's just to emphasize your points. If any of you guys are able to donate whatever amount, I mean, it could be $1, could be less, would really appreciate it. As I said before, the state is trying to essentially strangle us using finances, because they can't use, politics, and at the same time, they cannot exactly use the legal procedures to do it, because we aren't doing anything illegal in this particular regard, both in the court of public opinion and also in the actual, Kenyan constitution. So we really appreciate that. And I think my final word will just be that I'm very thankful, to have, I'm thankful to you guys, Wade, and your whole production team for hosting me for this particular,
More than happy to.
interview. But oh yeah, exactly. And I guess until perhaps the next time we do this, hopefully it's going to be on a much happier tone than this one. But
would
yeah,
love
that's
to
about
hear really good news, and of course, we'd love to see that this here is properly, funded, and to hear all the good news of how he's been, set free. Obviously, it just being able to afford the legal fees is not enough. I mean, in reality, real justice would be reparations for the crimes committed against him. Obviously, that would be the rational thing to expect, but at the very least, we can make sure that he's safe and free from the state for the time being. So with that,
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys so much for watching this entire interview. And this is Wade signing off.
We're spending billions every year for guns and ammunition. Our army and our navy dear to keep in good condition, while millions live in misery and millions died before us. Don't sing my country, 'tis of thee, but sing this little chorus. Should I ever be a soldier, neath the red flag I would fight. Should the gun I ever shoulder, it's to crush the tyrant's might. Join the army of the toilers, men and women fall your duty for the cause for land and liberty. And many are made and pure and fair. Her love and pride must offer on Mammon's altar in despair to fill the master's coffer. The gold that pays the mighty fleet from tender youth he squeezes, while brawny men must walk the street and face the wintry breezes. Should I ever be a soldier, beneath the red flag I would fight. Should the gun I ever shoulder, it's to crush the tyrant's might. Join the army of the toilers, men and women fall in line. Wake slaves of the world, arouse, do your duty for the cause for land and liberty. Why do they mount their Gatling gun 1,000 miles from ocean, where hostile fleet could never run? Ain't that a funny notion? If you don't know the reason why, just strike for better wages. And then, my friends, if you don't die, you'll sing this song for ages. Should I ever be a soldier, neath the red flag I would fight. Should the gun I ever shoulder, it's to crush the tyrant's might. Join the army of the toilers, men and women fall in line. Wake slaves of the world, arouse, do your duty for the cause for land and liberty.